All right, so today we are diving into Chip War.
Yeah, Chip War by Chris Miller.
This is the book that everybody's talking about.
It is.
So if you're worried about chip shortages and supply chains and all that
But
stuff,
it should be.
this is where you're going to learn everything you need to know.
Really, it's more than just a tech topic these days. I mean, Miller's arguing that these chips, right, the ones that are smaller than your fingernail,
Right.
they're the most critical resource on the planet.
More important than oil.
That's what he argues.
Wow.
It's not just about your phone or your laptop or whatever. It's about who controls the future of, like, technology, military power, everything.
Yeah.
And he backs it up with some pretty wild historical examples.
Okay. I am intrigued. Where do we even start with this whole chip war thing?
Well, imagine, like, computers that take up entire rooms.
Oh, yeah, I've seen the pictures.
And, like, the smallest glitch could be caused by, like, a moth flying into the wrong place.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Miller describes these early days, like the era of vacuum tubes, in vivid detail. It really helps you appreciate how revolutionary the invention of the transistor and the integrated circuit really was.
Okay, so that brings us up to Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
But I bet it wasn't always the tech hub that it is today.
Not at all. Chip War digs into the early days of Silicon Valley, back when it wasn't even called Silicon Valley.
Right.
And you've got these larger-than-life characters, like the Traitorous Eight. The Traitorous Eight, they dish Shockley Semiconductor to start Fairchild's Semiconductor.
Oh, okay.
And it's off to the races from there.
So is it more about like these big scientific breakthroughs, or was it just like cutthroat business in those early days?
It was a little of both, honestly. I mean, Miller's talks about how these companies were making these huge leaps in technology.
Right.
But they were also, like, playing hardball to get ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, corporate espionage was rampant.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Things got so intense that some employees even got arrested.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
High stakes, high stakes.
Yeah.
So, but then things get even more intense, like when the Cold War enters the picture.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not just about consumer electronics anymore, right?
No, suddenly chips are tied to national security military power, like the fate of nations.
Wow.
Miller uncovers these crazy stories of Soviet spies trying to steal U.S. chip designs.
Really?
They even went so far as to try to build their own version of Silicon Valley near Moscow.
Really?
Yeah, it was called Zelenok.
Hold on, they had their own Silicon Valley.
They tried to.
That's wild. Did it work?
Well, they poured a ton of resources into it,
Yeah.
hoping to become self-sufficient in chip making.
Right.
But their strategy was mainly focused on copying or reverse engineering American designs.
So they weren't really innovating, they were just playing catch up.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And that worked for a while. But
Yeah.
Chip War argues that this tech gap played a significant role in the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union.
It's kind of wild to think about something so small, like a chip,
Yeah.
having such a huge impact on global politics.
It's crazy.
But while the U.S. is busy battling the Soviets in the chip arena,
Yeah.
a new challenger emerges.
Yeah.
Japan.
Japan?
What was their strategy?
So they took a different approach.
Okay.
They saw an opportunity in memory chips.
Okay.
Specifically DRAM.
With strong government backing,
Okay.
Japanese companies start churning out these DRAM chips at just an unbelievable rate.
So they just flooded the market.
Basically.
What happened to prices?
They plummeted. American companies are caught off guard.
Yeah.
It's a huge threat, and not everyone survives this battle.
And this is when the potato chip king enters the scene.
The potato chip king.
I read that part twice.
Yeah.
I thought I was imagining things.
It's a great story.
This is wild.
Yeah, J.R. Simplot,
The French fry guy.
the guy who made a fortune selling frozen French fries, ends up pouring his money into this little-known semiconductor company called Micron.
Okay.
And they're based in Idaho, of all places.
Idaho. That's
Yeah.
like the underdog story.
Yeah.
Yeah, underdog story, for sure. So Micron, they're up against these huge Japanese corporations, right?
Right.
And everyone thinks they're doomed.
Yeah.
But they have this, like, scrappy, innovative spirit.
All
They
right.
just focus relentlessly on efficiency and driving down their costs.
So they're like the little engine that could.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But while all this is happening, there's this other quieter but maybe even bigger shift happening.
Right.
With the rise of TSMC.
Yeah. TSMC, huge player in this story.
Yeah.
Chip War really highlights the vision of Morris Chang,
Okay.
the company's founder.
Okay.
He saw the potential in this new business model.
Okay.
The foundry model.
The what?
The foundry model.
Okay, but break that down for me.
So, like, instead of companies like Apple or Qualcomm building their own expensive chip factories, right? They could just design the chips and outsource that incredibly complicated manufacturing process to TSMC.
So TSMC is like they're like the go-to manufacturer.
Exactly.
If you don't want to deal with the hassle of making your own chips.
Yeah, they're like the Intel of manufacturing.
Wow.
And that model proved to be incredibly successful.
Yeah.
It turned TSMC into the powerhouse it is today.
Yeah.
And Chip War really dives into how that shift happened.
Okay.
And why companies like Intel, who used to design and manufacture their own chips, were so slow to adapt.
Interesting. It makes you wonder how things would be different if they had embraced it sooner. But so we've got all this going on in the U.S. and Japan.
Right.
But then China starts to make its own moves in this whole chip game.
Yeah. China's entry into the chip war adds a whole other layer of complexity here.
Oh, yeah.
Miller does a great job of laying out their strategy, which involves, like, pouring massive resources into R&D, trying to poach top engineers from places like Taiwan and the U.S.
Right.
And let's just say some ethically ambiguous tactics to get their hands on intellectual property.
It's a little Wild West out there.
A little bit, yes.
When it comes to tech.
It's a competitive landscape.
Yeah, for sure. And we're not talking about, like, small companies here.
No.
Like, Chip War talks about how even AMD,
right,
which everybody knows,
yeah, a giant in the industry,
found themselves in hot water for licensing chip technology to Chinese ventures.
Yeah, that raised some eyebrows for sure.
I bet.
Big concerns about national security and whether those deals were helping China advance their military capabilities.
So it's a global battle for semiconductor supremacy.
It is.
U.S., Japan, Taiwan, China.
Yeah.
All vying for control. It's a lot.
Yeah, the stakes are high.
Yeah, they're very high.
Yeah.
So where does Chip War say this is all headed?
Well, Chip War lays out this kind of sobering reality, which is that right now, the most advanced chips in the world, the ones that are powering everything from like smartphones to like cutting edge AI, they're mostly made in Taiwan.
Right.
And as you know, China views Taiwan as part of its territory.
That's the whole Taiwan dilemma, right?
That's the Taiwan dilemma.
That's a little unsettling to think about.
Yeah.
It's something so small could be like a flashpoint.
It's a huge concern.
In some kind of geopolitical conflict.
And Chip War does not shy away from that. The book really explores like the potential economic and technological fallout.
Right.
If things were to escalate.
Wow.
Imagine a world where like supply chains are disrupted.
Right.
Innovation grinds to a halt.
Yeah.
Countries are forced to choose sides in this like technological divide.
Yeah, nobody wins in that situation.
Nobody wins.
So what can we do?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
Chip War, you know, doesn't offer any easy answers.
Right.
But it does stress the importance of like cooperation and dialogue.
Sure.
But it also acknowledges that geopolitical competition is not going away anytime soon.
Right.
So finding a way to balance like innovation, national security, and global interdependence will be key.
That's a tough one. But, you know, Chip War also highlights this other kind of critical issue, this bottleneck.
Oh, yeah.
That could totally reshape the industry.
Yeah.
What was it called again?
The lithography bottleneck.
The lithography bottleneck.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so tell us about that.
So it all comes down to how these incredibly advanced chips are actually made.
Okay.
You need these machines called EUV lithography machines.
Okay.
They are marvels of engineering.
Okay.
But they are incredibly complex.
Okay.
And ridiculously expensive.
Right.
And here's the kicker. Only one company in the entire world can make them.
Hold on. You're telling me that the future of AI, smartphones, all this stuff,
pretty much
comes down to one company?
It's a lot of pressure on this one company.
What happens if something happens to them?
That's a significant vulnerability that Chip War really dives into.
Wow.
The company is called ASML.
ASML?
And they're based in the Netherlands.
Okay.
And their EUV machines are vital, and everyone knows it.
So they're calling the shots in this whole thing?
It's more like they're at the center of a global tug of war.
Okay.
Chip War describes how ASML has become this like focal point for geopolitical pressure.
Right.
With governments and companies all trying to influence like who they sell to and where their machines end up.
Yeah, because if you control the machines,
exactly.
You control the chips. So it's not even about who can make the best chips anymore. It's who can make the machines that make the chips.
Yeah, basically.
Chip War really drives home how essential this one company, ASML, has become.
They're in a really unique position.
So what does this mean like for the future of chip manufacturing?
Well, it's definitely a strategic advantage, right? And Chip War talks about how ASML is navigating this whole geopolitical landscape very carefully.
Yeah, I bet.
They can't afford to, like, alienate any of the major players,
Right.
whether it's the US, China, anyone.
Right. They're walking a tightrope.
Yeah, it's a delicate balancing act.
What does Miller think this means for the future?
Well, Chip War makes it clear that this whole battle for, like, semiconductor supremacy,
Right.
it's not even close to being over.
Right.
If anything, it's just heating up.
Okay.
And it's a battle that's happening on so many different levels, from research labs to, factory floors to government negotiations,
Yep.
and the decisions that are being made, like, right now
Right.
about how we design these chips, produce these chips, even use these chips,
Right.
are going to have a huge impact on the future. And I'm not just talking about the future of technology. I'm talking about the future of our economies,
Right.
our security,
Wow.
maybe even the entire world order.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So after this whole deep dive into chip war, right?
Yeah.
What's like the big takeaway for our listeners?
I think the big takeaway is just how important
Yeah.
and how vulnerable these tiny little chips really are.
Yeah, you never think about it
You don't.
until somebody points it out. Like they're just everywhere.
They are.
They're the invisible engine of like
Totally.
the modern world.
Yeah, your smartphone, your car, like your refrigerator probably has a chip in it somewhere.
Yeah.
And chip war really reminds us that these things aren't just gadgets.
Right.
They're like strategic assets
What?
with huge implications for all of us.
It's a wake-up call.
It is.
We need to be paying attention to this stuff
Absolutely.
because it affects everything.
Yeah.
Chip war takes you behind the scenes
It does.
of this world that most people don't even think about.
Totally.
The innovation, the rivalries, the, geopolitical tensions
It's all there.
that are shaping the future of technology and everything else.
Yeah, the future's being written in silicon.
I love it. Well, there you have it, your crash course in chip war. If you're even remotely interested in this stuff, I highly recommend checking out Chris Miller's book.
It's a great read.
It's fascinating and a little bit terrifying,
Yeah, a little bit.
but in a good way.
In a thought-provoking way.
Exactly. All right, folks, until next time,